We'll call the meeting for the April Southwest Vermont Supervisor Union to order. First item on the agenda would be public comments. Do we have anybody make public comments? Yes.
Well, good evening, Ken, SVSU Board, Jim, Superintendent. I am here after one reading your updated public participation in boards, Leon. It calls for brevity, no discussion, and so I'm here simply, I feel compelled to be here because my name was used in what I believe was a violation of the open meeting law. So while it wasn't specifically with this board, all board members are responsible to follow the open meeting law. And I will say my comments as well at another board. But I was contacted by the MAU board chair, I guess it was last week, the week before, to respond and to clarify something that was asked of him using my name to go into executive session. And what I wrote to the Mount Anthony board was that I'm emailing to clarify and respond to a question you asked me about allowing board members into an executive session of the MAU board. While perhaps you have checked with Steve Stitzel, I am writing because my name was specifically used with regard to an executive session at MAU. As chair of both MAU and SVSU for many years, I suggested certain individuals enter executive session if the board and the body that was there agreed. You can recall when Fran wanted to invite Holly Bayan to executive session. It was the board's agreement that they wanted to hear from her in executive session over personnel. The board agreed to then invite her in for a personnel matter. The board, any board, can invite a relevant person into executive session. In the past, I have strongly encouraged alternates of the SVSU to attend SVSU executive sessions. On a personnel committee, when Larry wanted to be allowed in, before he was a member of the personnel committee, the committee agreed. A non-board member has no authority to attend a different board's executive session without the board's approval and for good reason. Since my name was used to say that I allowed this, I wanted to explain when it happened in the past, and I cited these examples. The section below, which I'm going to read to you, which I sent to Ken as well, is from the Vermont Open Meeting Law from the VSBA website. I believe you all should have been introduced to the ins and outs, the legal requirements, when you can have a regular meeting, a special meeting, emergency meeting, and in fact about postings on agendas so the public is warned about these things. So the section below, while in executive session, a board may only discuss the subject matter referred to in the motion of the executive session. Attendance in executive session is limited to members of the board and its discretion, its, quote, staff, clerical assistants, and legal counsel, and persons who are subject to the discussion of whom the information is needed. This is cited from VSA 313B. A board cannot take any action in executive session. I think you're all very well aware of that. And then, if you were to go on to the Secretary of State's website, he also, Mr. Condos, has a pamphlet and many pages on what is allowed and what is not allowed, and who is allowed and who is not allowed. And I just wanted to make the board and the public known, make it be known that how our Vermont open meeting law is enforced. The following persons can be found guilty of a misdemeanor and fined up to $500. A person who is a member of the public body and knowingly and intentionally violates the provisions of the open meeting laws. A person who knowingly and intentionally violates the provisions of open meeting laws on behalf of the bequest of a public body. And a person who knowingly and intentionally participates in wrongful exclusion or inclusion of a person or persons from any meeting. It is cited. I have sent Ken the links to all of these, as well as to Tim. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that we elected members to the local boards to then sit on this board. And there is a thing about transparency and the community being involved by following such rules and sections in the law. So I don't expect an answer or a response. That's not how it works. I understand that all too well, and I hope I was brief enough. I also understand that under correspondence to the board, that policy allows me to write, and the board chair will disseminate as such, as he or she feels appropriate. So I do hope that perhaps I wrote this to Tim, that the superintendent was maybe not present for such a violation of the open meeting law, because certainly the chief, the CEO of this organization should be aware of open meeting laws. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Okay. I'm going to respond to that a little bit, because since I was the one that used Sean Marie Aller's name, and with good cause. We followed exactly at that last.
I'm asking for a response.
I'm going to give you a response anyway.
That's up to Ken.
That's all right. I'm going to respond to you, Sean Marie, so it doesn't matter what you want.
I wasn't talking about you.
Well, but I'm saying I'm the one that said your name. And just so you'll know what happened at that meeting, and I'm just trying to figure out how you know what happens at an executive session meeting, and it kind of, I find that appalling. Number one, the executive session is supposed to be executive session, just that. And number two is I find it interesting, because that leads me in a suspicion of, are you trying to tamper with executive session things? As far as somebody, we're going to be fined $500, I doubt that. That's been tried before years ago with me. It doesn't work. And number three, everything, we asked the board chair, did he have a problem with it walking in before we got in there? The board then, with everybody in there, with the exception maybe one or two, and the reason why I had Larry come is because I was deathly sick. Dave Durfee was not there. He was in San Francisco, and I wanted to make sure we've got represented. I went anyway, as sick as I was, and Larry was there. Now, Larry sat in the corner, did not vote, did not say boo. Okay, in fact, he was asked to vote on something, but we know he couldn't. Now, the superintendent was there. Obviously, the superintendent didn't have a problem with it, nor did the board. So I don't know what the problem is. You've got to bring everything to an open meeting instead of and I've got your email. I've got your email. It was sent to me, okay? But my point is, and you know me, you've served on the boards with me long enough, you know, there is such a thing as code of ethics. You know what I think about the code of ethics, because only certain people get to do certain things if they're in a certain power mode. And so as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I used your name, big deal. You've used my name before too. And as far as I'm concerned, this is all nonsense. But that's okay. You have the right to come here and do that. That's fine. But I will respond to you every time, and you know it.
Ken, may I? I will just ask the board, if they're so interested, to read also part of the law. And I know Fran is very well aware of this, because we've had many discussions over the years about confidentiality within executive session. And in fact, while you are asked to be confidential, and I know more now than I did before I got here. Thank you, Fran.
Good for you.
There is no specific statutory requirement that executive session deliberations remain confidential. It is, however, a code of ethics. And I'm assuming this board, like other boards, signed one when they were re-elected to this board, although I haven't seen it on the website. So, Fran, thank you for responding. I always appreciate your response back to me.
You got your code of ethics if you want it. Belongs in the garbage as far as I'm concerned, but that's just my point.
Fran.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else under public? Yes, Nate?
Hi, I'm Nathan Wallace, Senator from North Bennington. The appointment of the principal at the high school seemed to engender much more furor than one would like. And I was since the MAU board does not hire the superintendent, but your board does, I was wondering if you would be willing to instruct him to try to tell us why he feels there was so much negative reaction to his appointment.
I'll answer that at an MAU meeting.
Okay. Because you're not supposed to have any dialogue anyway.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Any others? Yes?
Hi, my name is Liz Weber. It's come to my attention, I've spoken with someone, it's on the similar subject, from the search committee for the principal of MAUHS, and it's come to my attention that the recommendations of that search committee were ignored in favor of a candidate who seems to be far less qualified for the position, having been the principal of a school with 200 students and 14 teachers, as opposed to the shy of 1,000 students and 14 teachers that pretty much makes up the special education department. So I'm just a little confused as to why that would have happened, and why would we be giving our kids a candidate who obviously doesn't seem to be quite as qualified. And again, I've heard this from someone on the search committee, and really, I just wanted it clarified as to why all of this was going on.
It's a simple question. Who are we talking about? I missed who we're talking about.
The principal, the new principal search for MAUHS.
Thank you.
You have something at the Mount Anthony meeting.
Yes.
Next Mount Anthony meeting, Mr. Colkeen will respond to that question.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, treasurer's report for March. Give a motion to...
So moved.
Second. Second. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of treasury report, accepting? Okay, unanimous. Update on solar consortium. Rick?
Yeah, in your packet, you should see a agreement with Complete Energy Solutions. As I talked with this board a few months back, there was a bunch of school districts, a bunch of supervisory unions across the state that have formed a consortium to purchase solar power. As part of that process, we applied to the state of Vermont for some RED money, the Regional Educational District Incentive Money for mergers and joint contracts. We received a grant to hire a consultant to help us draft an RFP to put out for the project. So that's been fully paid. To date, no district money has been expended. The next step is to enter into an agreement with CES, who was the winning bidder, as the contractor, or as a consultant for us to hire a contractor. And if you read through there, the only commitment, if you agree to that contract, is that after they bring us a proposal, if we choose not to take that proposal and we do a different contract with somebody else, which I'm not sure why, and I'll explain that in a minute, we are still obligated to pay CES their commission fee for that energy. And their commission fee is 2% of the savings you will see on your energy bills. Most of these contracts across the state are seeing between 10 and 12% reductions in their energy bills. It is forecasted right now, because of the size of this consortium, and there's about 12 SUs and some sizable ones. We're obviously large. Chittenden South, Rutland school, they're not an SU, they're a school district. Brattleboro is Windsor, South, East. Springfield, there's some sizable participants in this consortium. We're estimated to see between a 20 and 25% reduction in our energy bills. But at the end, in any event, they will put out an RFP, they'll structure the RFP, and they'll come back to us and give us proposals that we can then react to. So there is a commitment. The commitment is if we say no and we go with somebody else, we owe them money. But I don't see why we would go with anyone else because all other programs have been significantly less than what this is currently being proposed. So if you want to move forward, we need an action tonight. If not, we will lose this opportunity. It doesn't mean we can't go do something by ourselves somewhere else, but we'll lose the opportunity to be part of the larger consortium.
Is there any financial impact on the member districts?
No.
Okay.
The only, if you enter into a contract, if they bring you back a proposal and says the risk is it's a 20-year agreement. So the other thing I should say is the agreement, the ultimate agreement you would enter into with a contractor is a contract that has been developed by numerous attorneys across the state, and it's been modified, it's been consolidated to one master contract that everyone now, VSBA's attorneys looked at it, the Vermont School Board, the Vermont Superintendent's Association has hired an attorney to review it, so they've all agreed on this one master contract. And the risk is it's 20 years. So the recommendation by the consultants is, you know, if we bring you back a proposal, don't buy all your power through this. Buy 20, 40, 50% of your power, because if something comes along in that 20 years, you want the flexibility to be able to take advantage of another program if it's available. But there is no cost to the district, other than the potential opportunity cost of the 20-year commitment. There's no hard number. It's just.
So what's your recommendation, Rick?
I would recommendation we take the next step because you're still at no cost commitment, and just see what the numbers, what the hard numbers are that come back at us.
I'll make a motion, excuse me.
Questions?
Rick, Shasberry periodically talks about doing its own project. The school would be a large portion of that because they are one of the largest users in town. Would this bind us to not being able to do something in addition?
No, you could, you could do for, say you could do 10% of your power through this and do 10% through another deal through town if you want to do it. You know, you don't have to do anything through this. I mean, you can see this proposal and say, you know something, I don't.
As an individual
Right.
entity? Okay.
Right. I just need the SU's action to move to the next step, to continue the conversation.
Let's get a motion on the floor first. George made the motion. Can we-
I'll make a motion that we,
Okay, second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Is there more discussion?
Ray has one.
Now, Ray, I'm sorry.
So how did you state the fee again?
It would be 2% of the percent we're saving, so it's just because it's late in the day for me, but, so if we save 10%,
Yeah.
our fee to CES is, I'm sorry, it's 10% of what we save, so if
Yeah.
we save 20%,
For
we
over 10 megawatts?
we pay them 2%.
Yeah, okay.
So if we get a contract that says a 20% savings, we're gonna see a net savings of 18%.
But the way, I don't know, I'm looking at this chart
Yeah.
in the documents. It gives 4 different levels of solar production
Right.
for a contract. It says their fees run from 20% client savings to 10%, depending on the size of the megawatt.
Right.
And that's the same thing as what you're saying?
Right, and that's basically the size of the consortium. So if we go through this process and only Woodford says, yeah, I want in,
Yeah,
their megawatts are gonna be fairly small, so
Right.
it's gonna be at the higher level.
higher one.
But if all the SUs across the state who are
Then
indicating,
it drops to 2%.
right. But we'll see that at the end before you have to make a decision.
and individual districts
Yeah.
have control over the
Yeah.
decision.
This is
Call
quite
the
a
question.
conflicting issue for me. The supervisory union will save money, okay? But the electric rates for every citizen of Vermont goes up to pay for it. You'll see here on page 5, it has the Vermont solar incentive rate of 19.5 cents per kilowatt hour. The national average is something like 9 or 10 cents. So because of a government law, all right, which mandates that the power companies pay twice the value of solar electricity, and then they just gimmick, and it's just so convoluted. We're sitting in a building right now, which several years ago, we all agreed that the heating system for this building would be, wood chips? Would be wood chips. And we measured wood chips against oil, against gas, against propane, and it's a better deal, okay? You actually can see that burning this and the BTU value and the cost of everything at the time, the projected cost, okay, was a good deal. This is just all built upon constructs that only exist in law, all right? And the amount of solar electricity in the country is nil, all right? 50-year projection is there will never be enough solar electricity to even hardly to significantly impact the country. So all I'm saying is, with this, the basis of the savings is charging everybody in Vermont twice the price of electricity. We're number 1 in the country for the cost of electricity because of this solar baloney, all right? All right, it's all nice, I love the I'm a chemist, I love the voltaic cell, whatever how to pronounce it. It's just fascinating, okay? But it's not there yet, okay? And this here, you know, what was that company in California I mentioned last time? But anyway.
Solyndra.
Huh?
Solyndra.
Solyndra. But it's, you know, we will save money, okay? So I'm thinking I should vote for it, but no, it affects everybody. It affects everybody adversely. Our electric bill, we're paying, you know, my net is almost 18 cents a kilowatt hour down in Pownell. Down in Pownell, we have this huge solar array, okay? And I've been hard pressed to find anybody in Pownell who sees the benefit to Pownell for it. Okay, somebody in this state gets a credit for carbon in that state. And the amazing thing is, in the state of Vermont, okay, up until last year, we had the absolute lowest carbon footprint in the country. Okay, essentially all our electricity was hydro and nuclear, and it's still mostly hydro. So this offset, all this solar stuff going on in Vermont isn't offsetting any carbon. If you think carbon is a problem, I don't, but it's not offsetting anything in Vermont. Okay, it's somewhere else. You know, so this whole deal is okay. So I'm opposed to it. I'm sure we can find other ways of saving money. And here at the middle school, I think it's so the way we did the heating here was fine. And the part that's ignored in Vermont, we're the #1 carbon polluter for burning wood in the country. There's more carbon per person for burning wood than any other state. But that's sacrosanct. I burn wood. I burn a lot of wood, okay? So it's all too political. So thank you.
Anybody else with a comment?
And I speak for myself, not for Pownell, but I'm going to vote for Pownell.
Okay.
But Jim, should we not take advantage of this opportunity, even though I agree with what you're saying?
You're older than me, okay? And I believe in God, all right? So sooner or later, we're going to have to, I know I'm going to have to meet the maker, okay? And I don't want to, I can't honestly vote for this. But after him.
Any more comments? Seeing none, all in favor of filing this request? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4. 7, 4.
Can we do the against again, please?
Against, put your hands up again. 1, 2, 3. Next to Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Rick, you're on again, I think, with the E-rate Wi-Fi.
Actually, I'm gonna let Frank handle it.
It's Frank.
Oh, Frank, okay.
Hello. We're in a unique place this year and next year in that the federal E-rate program is extending a substantial amount of money to be available for purchasing equipment rather than just telephone services. As the telephone services go away, which I mentioned at the meeting where I requested the new telephone service, as that goes away, they're gonna for the next couple of years fund some equipment, and we're due for an upgrade on our wireless system. I believe everybody has a copy of the proposal that I'm asking you to vote on. Essentially, we put out an RFP to upgrade our controllers and our switches and routers and access points in all the buildings. And no one responded to everything. Certain vendors responded to certain parts of the RFP. And that's why this is split out into two separate sections. It was one RFP that we put out, but nobody could fulfill everything that we were looking for. The first top there, only two vendors actually responded at all, and one didn't provide a bid, and Digital Warehouse did. And this is for, what is this for? This is for switches and routers, primarily. So a lot of hardware. This would give us new hardware and everywhere for switches and routers. I am recommending we go with that company, not just because that they're the only people that we that responded, but also because we do have a history with them. Their service is excellent. Their equipment is excellent. We've had a long history with this particular vendor, and we had to. There was with the new E-rate program in place. There's also certain deadlines that needed to be met, and we needed to let them know that we had something in place by a deadline of April 16th. So we had to at least tell them, yeah, we'd like to do this, and if we do this, we'd like to, we're going to use this vendor, upon your approval, of course. So that's for switches and routers, and then the second one, we received more bids, and this was for the access points and the controllers that control the access points. And the first vendor there, First Choice Communications, they wanted to give us all new, their proposal was to give us all new system, pull out all the APs, replace them, new controllers, and then, actually, I don't think it's on this, in this figure, there was also a management piece from another subcontractor of theirs called Extreme Networks, and I don't think that that's in here. But even if it was in here, it still comes to the the higher price. One of the interesting things is all of the price. I mean, the price of all of this is really close. If you look at Metropolitan, who I'm recommending, and SHI, it's really close. And the figures that you're seeing in that middle column, that's the cost of the equipment, or the cost of the licenses, or the, of all the hardware and the licenses for that. And then the cost on the right is what we'd actually be paying once we get our reimbursement from the FCC. Any questions? Yeah, Ray.
Ray?
Well, so you've got hardware in both sides of this
Yep.
proposition. And are the specifications such that we know the hardware is going to work?
Yes.
The other hardware.
Which other hardware?
The controllers at the wireless access points.
The controllers control the wireless. I'm sorry for interrupting, but they control the wireless access points.
Right. But don't they have to work with the hardware that's provided by Digital Warehouse for switches and routers?
Yes, the whole system is compatible. I had certainly had my senior systems administrators in on the conversations. We had vendors come in and actually walk the buildings. They made it very clear to the vendors exactly what we were trying to do, and they're well aware of that. I'll stop there. Does that answer your question, though, Ray?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, yep.
Yep.
When's the E-rate reimbursement going away? And
We have this year, and we know we have next year. And next year, there'll be another upgrade that we're gonna want to know that we'll be ready for. One of the things that I like about this, as it stands, is all of the access points that we already have installed and in place would simply be licensed for a new, a newer version of the radio. It would be an N radio, it would go from a G radio to an N radio, which is current state-of-the-art. There's a new state-of-the-art coming called 802.11 AC, and it's coming out in stages. The first, they don't call it stages or phases, but something like that. The first stage is out, the first phase is out, and it's working okay. You know, it's being beta sampled everywhere or whatever. The next phase is due to come out any day. We're just kind of waiting. I would prefer that we wait to see how that technology plays, so to speak, with the devices that it's reaching before we make that step. That said, just relicensing the APs so that they're current state-of-the-art is a much smaller project. It doesn't require us pulling stuff off the wall and pulling wires out and stuff like that. And it will definitely work with the equipment that we know we have now. That answer your question? Okay.
Close. I'm on BSD board, and you know we went through a slew of problems at our 3 schools, and they finally got somewhat squared away. Is this going to bring on a whole nother set of issues?
I'm hoping it's going to resolve some of those issues. One of the things we're dealing with in the older buildings especially, I mean, we don't really have a whole lot of problems in this building. It was built in this century, you know, so that helps. But a lot of problems involve certain things like, you know, metal walls or lots of concrete, wiring that, you know, is in the ceiling connected to, as a matter of fact, we just pulled one out of Molly. There was an old, like when they first came out, wireless access point, Promiva, I think, up in the ceiling somewhere that was still sending rays that were, you know, interfering with everything else. It was sending radio frequencies that were interfering with other things. We found that last week during vacation, finally, and we got that out of there. So, yeah, hopefully, Mr. Rowley, it's going to make everything better. That's the general plan and trajectory here, is to make it better.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, Mark?
Yeah, the first choice is recommending the new system versus the upgrade.
Yep.
Is there any advantage to us doing that now, as in technology, instead of doing, like you're saying, you're talking more upgrades that are coming? So is there any advantage to doing the new system versus just keep upgrading the old stuff that we have?
One advantage we might see is the fact it would be a new system. It would be an all-new system. But that would definitely require pulling everything out. I mean, and it would also require bringing them in to do some of that work, where we can do that all in-house now. And labor is not a part of this. This is just equipment.
But is this the next step of technology that we're going to be requiring 3-4 years down the road that we're going to pay for anyways eventually?
Repeat that, you mean?
Is this going to be the next step down the road, 3-4 years down the road, that we're going to be required to do anyways? It's like these things.
We're probably going to want to go to the AC once we feel comfortable with how they're working, and as we get more Chromebooks or whatever that we put into the buildings, making sure that those radios are going to connect to the access points. The thing that is similar here, so to speak, is the equipment on this list will support moving forward. Where right now, if we were to do the first choice scenario, we would, again, be pulling everything out now and have to add the labor to this cost. But we wouldn't have to do it next year or the year after, we'd be moving forward. If we do it the other way and just change the radios, the actual antennas and the radios and the APs, we can do that again. We can we could just change those devices without having to change the back end. The controllers would still be the same controllers, switches, routers would still be the same switches and routers. So we'd only be looking at upgrading just the APs, and I maybe misled. We would have to, if we go to the AC, we would have to, I believe, change the actual access points, but that's just a matter of us unplugging it and plugging the new, and plugging in the new one, not the whole entire system.
Right.
Does any of this require rewiring, either under the proposals you're recommending, or if you went with first choice instead?
We're going to do some upgrades to some wiring as needed regardless, but that's not included in here.
That's not really an issue.
It's not in here.
And then one other question for my information. Does this only affect on-site location schools, or does it include central office?
It includes central office. So, yeah, there'd be some sort of, I don't know how that's Rick's part to figure that out, but. And one of the things, though, to be aware of, Ray, anything in central office, anything in a building that does not house students, and I believe probably Division Street too, although I think you actually already have the new, you do have the new radios, is not E-ratable. We don't get 80% back on anything at Centra.
That really isn't my issue. My issue is whether, pragmatically, whether I should vote on this.
Okay. Other questions?
So we're asking for a motion to accept it?
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the bids for routers, switches, access point, and controllers, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next item, change in speech and language pathologist position, 8/10 to full-time.
Yep, if you have any questions on that, Karen Burnell is here for that. Karen, do you want to address that? Yep.
During our Finance Committee meetings for the upcoming budget, I had talked with the Finance Committee about the increased need of or the increased number of children coming in with very complex disabilities. And so we have this 0.8 SLP position right now, and because of that increased need in the complex disabilities and the fact that our practitioners travel, we really needed to increase her time in order to meet the needs of the children on IEPs. So it is in the budget. The Finance Committee had approved it, so it did end up in the budget, and we're asking for the change for next fiscal year, so beginning with next school year.
Again.
It's 4 days to 5 days.
Yeah, it's 4 days to 5 days, right.
And it was in the budget that passed.
Do we have a motion to
So
accept
moved.
the recommendation?
Second it.
And second. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor of moving the position 8/10 to full-time? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, benefits offering.
Joy.
I'd like to make a motion, beginning July 1, 2015, the SVSU Board agrees that eligible employees not subject to a collective bargaining agreement will be offered benefits which are standardized by employee classification. Detailed information regarding the benefits offerings and eligibility criteria will be published in the Employee Handbook of the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union and its member districts.
Second it.
Fran seconded it. Okay, I think Joy went around to every district and gave an explanation.
But she is here tonight if you have any further questions.
Do you have any more questions at all? Seeing none, all in favor of updating this eligibility, raise your hand. Okay, unanimous again, thank you. Okay, consent agenda. Can we have a motion to accept the consent?
So moved.
Second. Okay,
No, we're discussion.
go ahead, questions, Jim.
Okay, at the last, I don't know if this is appropriate, stop me if I'm wrong, but I was appointed to the Personnel Committee, and I was thinking about a method, a systematic method of going from resignation to filling the position. And would it be appropriate if this committee made a motion to instruct the Personnel Committee as follows, where all resignations, retirements, okay, would go to the Personnel Committee, and the Personnel Committee would have more time to look at each of them, quickly, I would hope, okay, and we would have some, if there's an emergency, the superintendent can fill it, where at least we're looking at every job to fill, don't fill, or delay filling, was my thought. And then that would come to this committee in the consent agenda, where we would have the Personnel Committee look at these quickly. They've been over and over and over again, and all this stuff with House 361, they're doing all this baloney, and it's all about employees, all right? 80% of our costs are employees, and we're not going to cut them at budget time, okay? And the only way to do it is when somebody leaves or retires, it's the most painless way. We just take an honest look at it, fill it, or don't fill it this year, okay? So is there any, I'd like to have some discussion. Does anybody think that's a good idea to have the Personnel Committee do something like that?
Not to be funny, but I'm sure the superintendent looks over every position as it goes out to be advertised, and they must check if there's an actual need for this position. We just don't automatically replace people that are retiring.
No, because we've heard this from every board that they want, and we hear it from the state, that this, and from the Secretary of Education, this is the opportunity with any retirement that, and we could do it with the Personnel Subcommittee, but are we talking, Jim, are we just talking about SU employees? As what will happen then with the individual boards? Because they all have different approaches to filling positions.
All right. What percentage of the employees are supervisory union? About 40%?
I don't know percentage, 200 employees.
Well,
maybe total.
this board is concerned with supervisory unions.
Right.
Okay, and we sat here and you sat almost crying, I might have to lay somebody off. I mean,
Yeah.
so how about this? If the Personnel Committee doesn't, it's still your call.
Yeah.
Okay, but maybe they would just red flag something for you and just say, we think you shouldn't fill this. But then it still goes up the chain of command after that board. Because we sit here in 2 minutes where...
But I would think that that's more appropriately done at budget time, too. I mean,
No, because...
Too late at that point.
It's too late, I'm saying during the course of the year, okay, just say we eliminate 5 positions, and we do the 5 positions for 5 years, it's 25 positions. Then we can stay afloat.
Dave?
Yeah, I guess my first thought, when you said, Jim, it would never happen at budget time, and I'm not sure that I would agree. I mean, I think it should, if there's a position that's not needed, it should be reviewed, that's the time to review it. If there's a retirement or a resignation and we decide we don't need to fill that position, my question would be, why was there somebody in that position in the first place this year? So that's the first thing. The second thing is I would be reluctant to say the Personnel Committee, even a subset of this board, the Personnel Committee, has more, a better, clearer understanding of the personnel needs than the superintendent.
I think you could put the desire of the board out there that you want any position that it comes open, that it is scrutinized and reviewed, and it still has to come to you. So you have the you could ask for justification each time the position comes up. The problem with mid-year retirements, which we don't have many of, thankfully, but resignations we might, particularly if it's a classroom teacher, we are going to fill that position because we don't have that luck. It's not, all resignations don't happen at a neat time at the end of the school year, which would be the time to make that break. So I would welcome more that the direction comes from the committee that they want the administration to understand that every time there's an opening that, all effort is made to scrutinize whether that position needs to be renewed, and that justification would be given. I mean, that's appropriate question to ask when we're replacing a position tonight and say, have you reviewed this? Is this position need to be filled at this time?
And
Ray?
Well, I'm going to agree with Mr. O'Connor, and I think that if the position is that well justified, it will be a matter of a few minutes review. And how many of these do we have in a year? I mean, do we have more than 20 resignations in a year? I mean, you might add up to 100 minutes time for the Personnel Committee over a period of a year, and I think it would keep us familiar with the rationale for those particular employees. Some of them, it's going to be so obvious we're not going to ask for a reading, I'm sure.
But Leon?
I think going way back, one of the things that I think we may be overlooking that we wanted to do when we talked about that is that we wanted to have administrators take a look at the restructuring process or rethink how we do things that if somebody was in or multiple people that were in before we just automatically do it. So you can restructure. So that's the main thing that I was looking for back here is this the way we want to do it now? I mean, we're doing it this way now, and if the person is going from this position, can we do it another way, without the resources of that particular individual out here? Can we shift things? That's the thing that I'm more apt to say, that this is what we need to be passing on, that every time somebody is retiring or moved from a position, that we look at the structure that individual was under and whether that structure can be restructured a different way to be more effective, or was it not effective? What do we need to do and make changes along that line, as opposed to saying, let's just look at it?
I understand where Jim is coming from, but we do have an administration, and we do have individual boards. And is this not something that we, when we meet with the superintendent at our individual board meetings, we as board members should be bringing it up at that particular time as we see these things coming in? So I think that rather than have it go to a personnel committee, which is going to be made up at random of whatever board members want to be there, it's almost an overwhelming job for a lay committee to be doing. Actually, I think it's an administrative function.
So to clarify, we're just talking here supervisory union employees.
Yes.
We're not talking, Pownell will take care of Pownell.
Oh, yes.
You take care of
Yeah.
Rick?
I was just going to say.
But Jim, doesn't the board already have them? And we bring that recommendation to you?
But it blows through here, but by the time it gets here, it's almost too late, because the resignation and the nomination are both sometimes in the same packet, okay? All I'm saying is, it's just, we'll assign the personnel committee to pause and look and throw a red flag up to you. That's it. There's no authority in the personnel committee, it's just that you guys might want to think about.
I will tell you that we do look at every position that comes open as a way not to fill it. So that's a standard practice that we do right now.
But just like I do in BSD meetings. 1 out of the 4 has a criminal background check pending. Jim, I mentioned to you, do we have an ETA?
So I don't have that answer before me tonight. I don't know if Joy can answer that or not.
Okay. I just really want to keep alive that we're looking to to make a cut here or two at some point. If there's an obvious cut to make, we need to make it, you know?
I agree.
Did you want me to respond about
Yeah.
the background check? As many of you are aware, the Vermont Criminal Information Center is the agency that actually governs all of our background checks and our rules. They have typically had a 6 to 8 week waiting period to receive back criminal record check results. However, this year, because of some administrative issues that they have had, that has sometimes exceeded 12 weeks. And that's generally too long for us to wait to get a person into a position and up and running. So we've taken some interim measures to make sure that we are doing our due diligence and making sure that an online background check has been processed and that we are sitting and having those meaningful conversations with those employees to ensure that before we put them in a school, we've done our due diligence. They also are generally not with students unsupervised prior to that time that the full background check is back.
Okay, thank you.
It may speed up now because I saw yesterday the governor is now mandating to the state that they no longer ask anybody that's going to be hired by the state if they have any criminal background on the application. So, whether they're criminal or not, he says he wants to give everybody a second chance. So maybe with not them asking, maybe ours will be fewer and they'll go faster.
Call the question.
Any other comments on the minutes or on the warrants?
Got one
Yes?
question on the warrant, Ken. It's on the very first page, second item down. It's under Anytime Fitness. It's a check for $1,000. Can you explain that? It's worded so that it doesn't really...
It's part of our PATH wellness program that we get through VHI, and it is a global membership to Anytime Fitness that gives all of our employees a discounted membership to them.
It sounds like we're subsidizing that we're paying for that discount. Or is VHI paying us?
You're right.
We're getting a check, we're getting reimbursement back for this?
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's actually not reimbursement, we get it up front and we just pass it on.
Does that cover board members too?
Thank you.
It might, I don't know. It could. Oh, no.
Does it cover board members?
Any other questions?
It does. It does. Yeah.
You're employed.
Oh, yeah, because you do get it.
Okay, no other questions? Okay, all in favor of the consent agenda, raise your hand. Against? Abstain? Abstain. One abstention. Larry. Okay, item 6, policies, number 5030, attendance. We need a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on this policy? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. Superintendent's report.
I'm going to ask Ken if you can read a statement for me. I apologize, I can't find my glasses, I don't know where they are. So what I need from the board is, every year, this is a routine vote that you take every year. The SU is the receiver of the Consolidated Federal Programs for Grants, so we have to accept that. So now that I have someone's glasses, thank you. So this is what the motion needs to be, and then you need to vote on it. My understanding is you do this every year. So this is to certify that representatives of all member school districts have voted at a meeting of the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union to authorize the Supervisory Union to accept grants, to administer, and to act as the representative of all member school districts. Such action is to be recorded in the minutes of the meeting held on April 22nd, 2015. So I could pass that down to Richard so he can do this.
Second.
Second.
And the grant is being written now, but we need to, as part of our grant for next year, we have to put the date in that this vote was taken, and that's why we're bringing it to you this evening. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Dave.
Ready to say aye when.
Oh, all in favor then? Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. I want to let you know that it looks like we're not going to have any more snow days, but
Rain days.
so our intent is to close, and I'll be bringing this to all your individual boards for you to vote at your next meeting, to the last day of school for students will be on the 22nd of June, which is a Friday. Staff will still report on Monday. The students will still be in school in excess of the required amount of days, but we think this is educationally prudent rather than bring the students back on Monday. And the real impact is on scheduled professional development for our teachers on that Monday, and would be hiring a lot of subs if we didn't do this. So I think it doesn't make sense. So that's a bit of information. I don't believe I need a vote from this board, but it will be at your individual schools. All staff will still be reporting. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about under my report, and I think this is a good time to do it, though I understand Jim might bring it up in his, is the issue about Pownell and the busing. So, good time. We're getting, remember, we've taken votes at the supervisory union to authorize the superintendent to apply for a waiver that would allow Pownell to continue to operate their own school buses. So what you voted last time was for us to conduct a study to see if this was where financially this set what impact this would be on the supervisory union and on Pownell. Because the letter that we had from the Secretary of Education at the time stated that to get a waiver, to be granted a waiver, they would have to show that there was savings to both Pownell and to the supervisory union. What we've learned since, and Rick still is working on what those numbers would be, because we're going to need that as part of any waiver that we apply for. But one thing that we've learned since that point is that the state would find that Pownell would be in compliance if transportation was provided by the supervisory union and then billed back through Pownell. That's your understanding also, Jim, correct?
The exact wording in the statute is arrange for the provision of transportation, that the supervisory union board will arrange for the provision of transportation. And the Pownell meeting, which was supposed to be last week, was moved to next week because of the school vacation. The order of operations was such we're going to finalize this last week and bring it here this week. So I'd just like to advise everybody it'll be important at the May meeting that we resolve what we're going to resolve, okay? Because we're looking at de facto, I guess, July 1st deadline.
Couple of things that we can go this way. One, for the supervisory union to take over transportation or arrange for the transportation, does that mean that the bus drivers from Pownell become employees of the supervisory union? And then the caution to the supervisory union there is, what does that mean? We're taking on liability. Are we taking on liability for unemployment, for workman's comp, for injury on the job? All those things need to be considered. One of the things the Agency of Education suggested to me is that we could apply for a waiver for 1 year to allow us to continue to study this, because if we can't get it done by July 1.
If we get this done next Wednesday night, okay, where Pownell comes up with language, where we won't require a waiver because we'll be in compliance. Pownell is in compliance if this board, if the supervisory union is reached, the board, okay, arranges for provision of transportation. And I worked up a little motion, but I can't bring it tonight because I have an authority, is that all the cost, fuel, blah, 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 okay, will be paid for by the supervisor and then reassessed to them. Everything gets reassessed to Pownell. And because we own the buses, and we have a sinking fund, but we're not going to buy a bus for 2 years. So that cost comes out of it. The state structure is in the background, changing everything anyway.
Right.
So All we're saying is, by the board agreeing to arrange for the provisions, and the provision is basically leave it the same, except supervisor union, the money gets processed through. And then in a year or so, when they change everything anyway, you know.
The caution from the Agency of Education is that, nothing's ever as simple as it seems. And what isn't simple is us assuming, the supervisory union assuming the transportation. It sounds simple, but we really need to look, HR's got to look at that, finance has got to look at that and see what the impact of, do they become our employees or not. And the caution that I was given by the Agency of Education, Jim's right. Technically, we would be in compliance if we did it through the supervisory union, but the caution they gave me is you still, if audited, you need to be able to show that the costs are less. And I'm going to forget the second term. It's efficiency and effectiveness, thank you. Effectiveness refers to what Pownell wants. They want to be able to, they like the way their buses work. The routes can be modified, in their opinion, easier, go up streets that maybe somebody else won't, do extra runs. That applies to the effectiveness of the contract. Efficiency basically is talking about, is it cheaper? And we don't know that. And the caution that I received today from the Agency of Education is, if we go this route of the supervisory union assuming and arranging for the transportation, at some point, we still might have to demonstrate the efficiency point of the contract.
I'd like to assert statutorily, that's only if you need a waiver. So by not, I'm thinking that's not going to happen. My opinion, looking at the law, is that's not going to happen.
No, and you're absolutely right. We do not need a waiver if the supervisory union arranges for the transportation, but and neither one of us are prepared to debate this part tonight, but the efficiency point, is it cheaper to do it through Pownell than through being part of the supervisory union contract? And what they did say to me, that if that it adds cost to the supervisory union, then you would never get that waiver. But so I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I didn't add that caution to the supervisory union.
Jim, I was wondering, Rick, have you been able to give us any information back to Pownell that would then come back to the supervisory before we do anything, or where?
No, it costs more. We're not arguing it's going to cost less.
Right.
The way it's set up right now.
We are?
No, we're not arguing. No, the efficiency of it is probably cheaper if they were under the contract with the supervisory union, but
however, for the next year or two, there's no capital costs. Our buses are paid for, and that's a big. If you take the amortization out of the schedule, okay?
Yeah.
And at the end of the 2 years, we go out for an outside contract when our buses have worn down when we depreciated them. So there's no, once you do that, okay, then the cost is really on par.
And the other point is the Senate bill has changed again.
It keeps going on and on.
And we don't know what that final bill is going to be. And they've talked in that bill about some significant penalties on transportation on not finding savings of costs on all members of the supervisory union. I don't see that happening, but we don't really, we're just guessing at what the final bill is going to look. And it could impact what happens.
The informal consensus of the Pownell people, and we've actually gone off for a vote from the parents, okay, that yes or no. There's no time for a referendum, but the legal issue of employees aside, but by you guys taking us over, okay, it gives us a year or two to sort it out.
The second option from the Agency of Education today was to apply for a waiver, for a one-year waiver, so that you can continue to operate the way you are while we look at this issue. And you know, nothing is guaranteed when it's verbal over a telephone, but I was led to believe that that waiver would most likely be granted because we are making progress in reviewing what should happen.
And I want to restate that we're way out of turn here because our bus meeting is next week. I thought it was going to be last week, but it's next week. So next week, Pownell will decide which way we want to go.
But this board won't meet, and that's why I'm telling them tonight where we are with the Agency of Education.
So after our meeting in Pownell, we're either going to continue to ask you for a waiver or wait to come to this board and ask for you to take it over.
Fran, you got a comment?
Yeah, I guess it's for Rick, how far along are we on the analysis with Pownell? And how long do you think it would be to finish it?
We put together a timeline. I don't have it with me. We've worked with the Pownell staff to identify all of their transportation needs. That piece is done. Our timeline has us coming back to SU's May meeting with all the data. The one thing that I think you need to know, and I am not an attorney, but you've heard me say it 100 times, probably 100 times, 100 times. But my interpretation of statute, and as it's been told to me, and this isn't going to be received well, this is not a Pownell decision. By statute, as it's currently written, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have the statute in front of me, this board is required to provide or arrange for efficient transportation to all its member districts. It is the board's responsibility, and it's an action you guys need to take. We will have the analysis done in May. I frankly am not totally convinced it's going to be a total savings.
It's going to be a what?
I think, what's that?
There's going to be a total savings.
I think the regular transportation to and from school will be a savings. But I think when you look at the special ed cost transportation, I think Pownell may be able to deliver that cheaper, and I don't know where that net number is going to come out. And that's just my hypothesis. I haven't finished the analysis yet.
That's interesting.
But I don't know, Jim, if I would sit here and say that it's going to cost more money. It may, possibly would, but what our contract asks us to pay for special education is pretty steep, and local bus drivers may be able to deliver that a little bit cheaper. And frankly, since it's this board's obligation, if that is truly the case, we may need to take this a step further and hire local people and local buses to do our sped transportation and contract out our regular transportation. It's a complicated process. It's a complicated statute, and it's an extremely tenuous issue, and it's not just in this district, it's across the state. Multiple districts across the state are struggling with this and dealing with this.
Get it out of the way.
So, I don't know if I answered your question, Fran, but...
The piece about why it's not Pownell's decision, or Pownell's decision alone, is from the Agency of Education, is the money isn't Pownell. So if we look at it in simplest terms, if 100% of their budget was coming from local funds, then they'd be free to do whatever they wanted with transportation and pay their own money. But when such a high percentage of their education spending is coming from elsewhere, from the ed fund, then the state, through the supervisory union, does have a say in it. And that's where the whole waiver and their approval of whether we continue to operate the way we are, that's where that comes from.
I want to agree with you and Rick that as I read the law, and I have a copy here if anybody wants it. Pass them around. Okay. It is the duty of the supervisory union board. The supervisory union board shall provide transportation. So that's, no one's arguing that, okay? So it is, but Pownell is asking, okay, beseeching the board to work with us on this. And part of that is, and where I jumped up when Rick was talking, the law is provide transportation or arrange for the provision of transportation. The efficiency stuff is only in the waiver language, which has most, I've been reading a lot of Montpelier law this last couple of years, and a lot of it's poorly written. This whole waiver thing should come at the end of what the requirements are. They're telling you what the waiver requirements are before they tell you what the requirement is, okay? And we shouldn't even be reading it. If we're agreeing that it's the supervisory union's responsibility, duty, to arrange for it, okay? All right, then we're just negotiating over how we arrange for it after that. So, but the feasibility, the cost part of it, in my opinion, and it's clear to me that we don't have to get into that unless we ask for a waiver. So this is all to be argued in Powell again next Wednesday.
But Jim, the superintendent did say that your chances on that waiver is going to give you a year's breathing time if you people so vote it.
And we'll vote that up or down next Wednesday.
That waiver needs to come from this board. That waiver needs to come from this board.
But we'll wait to see what happens with Pownell next, because they might decide that they don't want that waiver, or we work out the transportation, but then, so it'd be at the next meeting here.
I think a lot depends upon you and Joy telling us about the employees.
Right.
Okay? And then we'll have that information. So everything's premature tonight.
Because that is one of the part, we do not have an employee group or classification as bus drivers right now in the supervisory union. So if we took on these employees, we have to generate that, create what that looks like.
But the people of Pownell definitely want to keep their own buses.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I believe
We should
that.
support it.
That's it, yeah.
Okay. Under the chair's report, I received a letter this week, and I just want to read it. It'll take me 2 minutes. Sorry about my voice. I am pleased to inform you that Richard Pembroke of Southwest Vermont Supervisors Union recently achieved the Certified Administrator of School Finance and Operations certification by the Association for School Board Officials. SFO certification is granted to highly qualified individuals who fulfill multiple requirements, including providing eligibility through work experience, education, passing comprehensive two-part exam that tests competency in accounting and school business management topics, and adhering to the ASBO Code of Conduct. SFO certification demonstrates a commitment to high standards, ethical practice, and school business management. School business officials who earn this credential commit to ongoing professional development, renew the certification each year, and undergo recertification every 3 years. Congratulations, Rick.
Put it in his file.
And another thing, just to mention here, about superintendent's evaluation, it came up, we have a personnel. It said the board has worked with the Vermont School Board Association, VSBA, to conduct a year-end evaluation of the interim superintendent. The evaluation will gather feedback from all board members, staff, community members. Responses are due back by May 4th and will be compiled by the VSBA. It will include a verbal summary of results during the chair's report at the main meeting. So everybody, the next day or two in your electronics should receive a several pages from the VSBA. You are fill it out, take a few minutes, fill it out, send it back to VSBA. They'll compile it, send it to me, and then we'll have an evaluation report on the superintendent at the main meeting.
Jim, or excuse me, Ken, could we get them instead of on the electronic? Could we also get them mailed hard copies, please?
Does everybody want it hard?
Well, there's some people that don't get them electronically.
I was going to ask Joy to contact the people who get packages and send them the package.
Please.
How about everybody else electronically? You happy with that?
Yeah. So to check with Joy, because Mary Lee would know, whoever gets the packet, hard copy, make sure that they get a hard copy.
But are we under other?
Yeah, I'm finished now, others, yes.
I wanted to bring up an item which I brought up before, and I probably should have brought it up under the warrant. And Jim, I'm still concerned about the size of our legal bills. And is there something that that you and your office can do?
I review them monthly. I mean, there are two areas that were our legal, we have some ongoing special education litigation cases going on. So that probably is the biggest monthly generator. And we are in contract negotiations. That would be the second highest generator of monthly.
Because I think from what I'm seeing, we're going to be over budget on that.
That's possible, yeah.
But there's nothing you can do to...
Other than the restrictions we've talked about in the past, administrators are supposed to be checking with me before they contact the school's attorney, but I also have school board chairs who contact them too, and then we get the bill for that, and that's direct bill to those boards, so I don't have any control over when school board members or school board
So you think
chairs.
what's there is legitimate? And
Yeah, I review those bills best that I can, and the two big areas is really the ongoing special education litigation and negotiations.
Okay. That's all I have, Ken.
Any others, Fran?
In the past, we've used to have the meetings with all the school board chairs. Maybe it's time to have another meeting, say, to go through you, instead of everybody going off on their own, creating these attorney bills, so.
You're right there. Everybody's supposed to clear it to the superintendent.
Yeah,
before they go.
absolutely.
Does our attorney respond then to questions from school board members if they're not supposed to?
Recently, there was a school board chair that contacted Mr. Stitzel and did get a response, so that was, that I was not aware of type thing. And, it might be a good idea to get the board chairs together and have that discussion, because the board chairs who feel that they really don't need my approval to contact the school's attorney, most are considered and tell me their reason why they need to contact the attorney and so on.
Anything else under other? Yes, Ray?
Well, there's this FYI about the awarding of 4 stars to the SVSU Early Education Program at Division Street. And there's a small amount of money that comes with it. I think that should be mentioned to the public. They can't see this.
Speak to that, Karen, briefly?
As you know, any program that provides preschool education or public pre-K education has to go through a rating system, a quality rating system through the state called STARS. It's a 1 to 5 star rating. And we recently, for Division Street being a new program, was awarded 4 stars. And I think the award was $1,050. I don't have it right in front of me. Is that what?
$1,150.
Okay, close. So depending upon the level of the stars, the amount goes up. And when we achieve our 5th star, which we expect we'll be doing within the next 6 to 9 months, we'll get another bonus as well. The thing that kept us from getting the 5th star is you have to be in operation for a certain period of time, and you have an outside evaluator come in and look at your program, the environment, your curriculum, materials, supplies, and all of that. So we weren't ready and able to do that when we first opened up, but we'll be doing that in the next 6 to 9 months.
Did you ever get any of your 10 questions answered from the state?
I have not.
Really?
I did get a phone call on Sunday from somebody who asked for the list again, and they said they were going to get back to us.
They asked for the list again.
Well, it was someone who was on personal leave when it was sent, and I purposely did not include her in the email because of what was going on in her life at the time. So she had heard I had submitted one, and she called and asked me if I would forward it, and she was going to follow up on it. So.
Any others? Fran?
This is probably a dumb question, but I'll ask it anyway. I noticed in North Bennington, the Head Start is probably tripling the size of their building. That has nothing to do with the SVSU, no monies is coming from the SVSU to pay for that project?
No.
Okay.
No.
I noticed it, and I was just curious. Thank you.
Oh, excuse me.
No, I'm all set.
Jim, are we Personnel Committee and all that, we got to meet, but are we posting the assistant superintendency job?
No, I'm going to continue with Donna Leap for another year.
So should the Personnel Committee be having a meeting with you to go over some of these things?
Welcome at any time.
Ken, maybe you should resurrect that and get going so we can take care of some of these.
It's still on there, the personnel committee, everybody's.
Have you made up the committee?
Oh, yes, we gave it to Mary Lee, and she's got the list.
So do you want to schedule a meeting?
Well, I think it could be with the superintendent committee.
I will speak to her and we'll say that.
All right.
The list is in the minutes that we approved tonight, the personnel.
Yeah, we said that last one.
Any other?
Did he say as soon as possible?
Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Unanimous.